So today we have a guest, Carolynne Hill, and she is with the Hillside Market. And so usually, Carolyn, I interview my guests and I ask like where, or I talk about where we met. And I think we met on Instagram. I think that was like the official. But you were a
Correct.
part of the Homestead bundle too, right?
Yeah, I've done
Yeah,
some large collaborations with other social media stars, if you will.
yeah. So I think that's where I discovered you. And I saw your greenhouse plans, and I have fallen in love with them, and so has my husband. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But to help our listeners know who you are, can you just first of all, welcome to the podcast.
For sure.
But let us know what you're about and how you got into building greenhouse plans, and where you're from and all that.
This is a very loaded question. So
Okay.
I'll start out. So my name is Carolyn and I am from Alberta, Canada. So I'm in the northern part of Alberta. It's very much forest and lakes where I'm from. It's actually uh, anyways, lots of outdoor living type of lifestyle. It's pretty normal here per se. And as far as how I got into the greenhouses and the DIYs, it's really actually a funny story. I kind of fell into it. I didn't go out looking for this. So about 4 years ago, my husband and I decided actually that I would like to have a greenhouse. And
Mhm.
as we all know, it's expensive to do anything especially in our yard, building anything is expensive. And this was pre-COVID. So
Mm,
it was
yeah.
actually more reasonable then, but it's still expensive. So I decided that I wanted to build this greenhouse, and part of the agreement is obviously we need to figure out how to build this in a way that wouldn't cost us a lot of money. And some of the pre-manufactured buildings that I was looking at were either A, still very expensive and out of my reach, or B, the cheaper options, you kind of got what you paid for. So it wasn't necessarily a long-term solution. Anyways, I with all of that, I hit the notebook and I started sketching up some ideas for a greenhouse. Came up with an idea, showed it to my husband, said, "Yep, let's do it." We ordered the materials, picked them up, built this greenhouse. And then I've always been like a fan of home decor and like pretty things. I've always enjoyed that type of setup, anyways. And I was part of a Facebook home decor group at this time after I'd built my greenhouse. And I shared my greenhouse in this Facebook home decor group and shared the photos, and it immediately went viral. And
Mm,
immediately I was being harassed of how do I build this? I need more information. How did you do this? Yada, yada, yada. And the gears really started turning from there. I sat down at my computer. I believe I was on mat leave actually at the time. Sat down on my computer one day and I decided I was going to figure out how to turn this into a DIY guide. And the
mm,
rest is history. We have over 20 DIY guides now, not just greenhouses, all types of different homesteading or off grid camp type of
mm.
projects. Got some kids items too. We've got everything from chicken coops to kids' mud kitchens to outhouses to uh, other, like my raised garden beds are on there. Of course, greenhouse options. There's lots to check out. So that's kind of a bit of how I got specifically into the DIY guide side of things, and actually truly how the Hillside Market was born.
Okay. That is awesome. I actually didn't know you did other things until today, and I was looking at your website, which I had pulled up. So if you're listening to this episode on a podcast player, you might want to go to the YouTube because I've been pulling up some of her designs, and I fell in love with one design, but I didn't realize you were doing um, other things, like raised beds and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to share here which one I
I'm
really like.
curious.
Is this one,
Oh
and I
yeah, so
showed.
this
Yeah, go
yes,
ahead.
this is the petunia. This is what I call the OG. This is the one that built it all. So that is
Okay,
what kickstarted the Hillside Market, is that greenhouse that you're looking at right there.
okay, I love this one. And what I want to get into like why you chose to do it the way you did, but one of the things I've been wanting a greenhouse for a long time. Like I've been gardening for like 15, 16 years, and I've been dreaming about a greenhouse for that entire time. I'm hopeful next year will be my year and I will be able to get my dream of having a greenhouse. But what I was imagining, like a lot of people, I think when they see the greenhouses, they imagine those glass window type.
Yes.
And then I saw yours, that is the kind that I really wanted. But then I started thinking about how beneficial yours is, because if you break a glass in one of those windows, it's probably extremely hard to repair.
There, for sure. Like if you're talking of like one of the packages where it's a glass structure, for sure, it's
Mhm.
gonna be more costly to replace specific glass panels.
Yeah, I was more thinking the kind where you piece together a bunch of windows.
Even more
Yeah,
challenging.
yeah, that's
Now you're
yeah.
using antique windows too,
Hmm.
and then you sometimes the thing with antique windows too is that you're not always, or older windows, you're not always getting good quality like base frames, and then that's going to
Hmm.
affect the longevity of your building too. If your wood frame is already rotting or showing it's however many years old already, so and if it
Right.
wasn't cared for, it could definitely lead to decay, which, like you say, if you're using mismatched sizes of windows, could be challenging to replace some
Yeah.
of them.
Exactly. I mean, I still love them, but when I showed this to the petunia to my husband, he was like, yeah, I could totally do that. And he was more happy. And I was like, he's the one that be building it. So as long as I get my greenhouse. But if you're not didn't see the video or yeah, if you're not watching the video, it has, what is that called? Corrugated.
So it's actually called polycarbonate siding.
Okay.
So it is like a corrugated plastic, and specifically on my greenhouses, you'll see it's polycarbonate, and not
Okay.
to be confused with PVC siding. They look very similar, but polycarbonate is more expensive. It actually looks clear too when you stack up multiple pieces, whereas PVC actually looks blue tinged when you
Oh,
stack
interesting.
up multiple pieces. PVC will crack and shatter in the wind and stuff. It's not, and actually can cause scoring or like burn, like scorch marks on the
Uh-huh.
wood beneath it. Whereas polycarbonate, it won't crack, it won't split or break apart. It's not fragile in that way. Actually, I have a corner right on the top left of my greenhouse in the roof that is
Okay.
actually come undone. It's been undone for over a year, flapping in the wind, and hasn't let up or shown any damage or
Oh,
anything.
wow.
So they're actually quite hardy panels.
Okay.
Expensive, but
Yeah.
you get what you pay for.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm sure as far as like, it's easier to find, it's easier to
For
source
sure. That's
than it is the glass.
That's
Mm.
exactly it. It's easier to find, easier to source, easier to install. There is
Mm-hmm.
also warranty on those polycarbonate panels, of course, depending on your manufacturer. So if you did have problems, you could also pursue that too.
Okay. Okay. So I know why it's good to have a greenhouse, but I thought that, my podcast is about beginning homesteaders. A lot of people are just starting out their gardening journey. And they may not actually know why it's beneficial to even have a greenhouse, other than it looks really cool. But like, what's the reason we want a greenhouse?
So my answer is going to be very different than other people because
Mhm.
of where I live. I live in zone 3. So if you are new to gardening, zone 3 is on the harsher ends
Mm.
of things. We have extreme weather. So I'm also Canadian, so I'll be talking Celsius, but
Mhm.
winters are -40 and summers +30 would be like a hot summer for us. So
Mhm.
a greenhouse has challenges because in my area, it's not realistic for me to have a greenhouse that I'm planning to grow in year long, not something like this. If I want to
Mhm.
grow in a greenhouse year long in my area where it's -40, it's going to be a lot more labor and need to be a sealed in unit with insulation and, you know, solar power if you're not getting tied into the grid so you can run fans and heaters and things like that. It's a lot more involved. The type of greenhouse that I have and that I sell the DIY guides for is what I'd consider like a backyard greenhouse, like for your hobby gardener. And these are not going to be something that I would expect to grow in minus 40 and in the winter. It's just, again, not realistic. But what it does do is it extends your growing season on either end of the spectrum. So, for example, for me right now, our last frost date is actually not till May 26th. So my plants are actually not safe to go outside yet for still another 5 days. Anything that's tender, of course. So in this situation, I am using my greenhouse. It is not heated, but what it will do is it will keep the frost off of those plants. It's going to keep, so like the lows outside have been getting down to about 2 degrees right now. Again, this is Celsius. And my greenhouse has been staying consistently above 4 degrees at night. So it does hold a bit of that heat from the day. And of course, there's other things you can do with a greenhouse to improve your thermal mass. Things like and for those that are listening, if you're new to this may sound very overwhelming, but things like adding barrels of water, like in a black barrel, that adds thermal mass to your greenhouse, which would help at nighttime release a little bit of that heat to try to counteract those freezing temps. So again, back to why a greenhouse is useful in my situation. I have a lot of plants. They take up my house. So at this time of year, it's really nice that I can move them out to my greenhouse and take care of them out there. It's also a really good next step for hardening off your plants too. If you are starting them inside, keep in mind I'm seed starting as early as February. So I can't really get away from that and be able to seed start directly in my greenhouse because, again, winter is a challenge. But in other areas, and I know I have a lot of customers that are from the States, a lot. And I can't say all over the States is different than here because there's certainly a lot of states that are similar types of weather patterns is what I experienced. But more southerner states, places where it's warmer, these guys are actually able to seed start in their greenhouses, even though they're still experiencing those low, cool, like evening temps. They're overall warmer, like even in the winter months. So they can utilize their greenhouses for seed starting instead of having, because you won't have the same type of germination if you're seed starting, like let's say on a bench outside and just leaving them in domes, as opposed to a greenhouse where it does get warm from the sun and the humidity levels are different. And then in the fall, going into the fall, if you have a greenhouse that you're specifically growing in, as opposed to, like for me, I'm using it more as, I'll say, like a nursery type of situation. But if you have a greenhouse that you're actually growing crops in the fall, you're also going to gain an advantage because you'll be protected from those first frosts. The frost won't be able to come and settle in on your plants that you're growing inside your greenhouse. Hence why you end up with an extended growing season. So for people like me in zone 3 with very short growing seasons, this could actually mean that you can now grow things that you normally would not be able to. So having a greenhouse, there's so many different uses in a way. Like it depends how you set it up and how, if you're, like I said, if you're growing in pots inside your greenhouse versus if you're growing in the ground inside your greenhouse. Those are all going to have different effects on the overall function. And this can all be really tailored to everyone's own specific needs or interests. A vegetable gardener versus a flower grower is going to also have different needs or interests and maybe set up their greenhouse in a different way.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. We are in a warmer climate. We're in Georgia. So we're in North Georgia. So it's a little cooler than South Georgia, but so we do get some colder temperatures, nothing like what you're talking about. Yeah. And we do have a very long growing season, but I started my plants in my house, which thankfully I have these huge windows and that was my greenhouse, basically my
Yes.
house. But it's like, takes up a lot of the house, and I have grandkids and babies that
Hmm.
that are trying to destroy things. So having my own space, and I just love it when I see people on social media talking inside their greenhouse. I don't know what it is about that, but it just seems such like a calm place.
Agree. Honestly, I get the same. I feel the same way. Like I have
Hmm.
my little greenhouse, but I feel like you could never have too many greenhouses. I want
Oh
like
yeah.
all of the greenhouses.
Yeah.
There's just something incredibly therapeutic even about
Hmm.
spending time inside of there. It rained all day here yesterday, and I spent the day cleaning my greenhouse,
Hmm.
and it was wonderful.
Oh, nice. Yeah. See, I love that because it does rain here a lot. So it'd be nice to have a place to go into and still be in the
For
garden,
sure.
but not be getting wet.
And in your situation where you live, a greenhouse, you could totally use it for your seed starting. Again,
Hmm.
for my situation where I live, it's not realistic unless it was heated.
Hmm. Yeah. And your plans aren't really recommended for heating, or that it's
You
not
would
big enough.
so so my greenhouse, if you wanted to heat it, it's not like our value is important, right? So it's not
Hmm.
a fully sealed unit, hence why it's also a lot less expensive to buy something
Hmm.
like that as opposed to fully, you know, let's say like a passive solar greenhouse, for example, that has an
Okay.
insulated back wall and concrete footings, and it's a totally different kind of greenhouse. That's going to cost you likely tens of thousands of dollars to build something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like our little backyard greenhouses, the hobby greenhouses, could it be heated long term? I would say no, it wouldn't be an efficient use of resources.
Hmm.
That being said, could you heat it to protect your plants to extend your growing season? Yes, you
Hmm.
100% could. And it's on my list. I actually plan to add just a little a little electric greenhouse heater that is on a thermostat for specifically like this time of season so that I could even have my plants out a little bit earlier because
Hmm.
if the temperature did dip close to that freezing mark, I could have a little space heater, essentially, is what it would be, that would kick on and protect those plants that are inside that greenhouse. But will I be heating it in -40? No.
Okay. Okay. So what size would you like? How do people decide what size greenhouse is good for them? Because you have a few different sizes as well.
Well, bigger is always better.
Yeah. If you
I
can
mean,
fit the
truly,
biggest.
truly, like if you have the space and if you're really an avid gardener or see yourself even wanting to utilize the space for other things, I have customers that have purchased the DIY guide for the Iris, which is my 12 by 16 greenhouse. They're actually using it as a photography studio as
Mm,
well as their greenhouse. They have a little area where they're doing their plant nursery, and then they have photography studio on the other side of the greenhouse, which is
okay.
incredible. That would be an insanely beautiful photography studio.
Yeah.
Um, so,
I need to
but it's
look at that one. I don't know if I've seen the iris. I'm gonna look it up right now.
yeah, it's more of a timber frame style, so you uses
Okay.
much bigger lumber to build it. So instead of using 4x4 posts as the Petunia does, it's using 6x6 posts. So it gives it more of a just a beefier timber frame type of look. And
Okay, here it is. Yeah.
yeah, you'll see
Image.
it. So I don't have it set up as a greenhouse, which is maybe why you didn't spot it right away. We
Mm,
actually have it at our off-grid camp, and we
mm,
have it set up as we call it the shack. So we have a wood
okay.
stove in it, and we hang out there when it's raining outside, or if
Wow.
it's windy or kind of cold, or to set up our food inside so that the food is not in the wind and the
Yeah.
rain and the cold.
And
So
this
that's
size is what did you say it was?
12 by 16.
12 by 16. I think I could fit a 12 by 16.
Right? See, that's what I mean. Like when
Yeah.
you say what size greenhouse, it's all like everybody's gonna say, I'm gonna get the biggest one I could A afford and B
Yeah.
fit, right?
Yeah.
There's other challenges with going bigger. And again, this is depending on your jurisdiction. Everybody's got different rules in regards to like developing
Mhm.
your property. Some areas you don't have to pull permits at all for accessory buildings. Other places you got to pull for anything. like a
Mhm.
fence post in the ground needs a permit. So that is, I have that included in my DIY guides to really just check with your local office,
Okay.
because that could ultimately sway your decision
Yeah,
actually too.
I could see that. Yeah. So get the biggest.
Yeah.
uh, you mentioned the other things that you have, other types of plans you have. Can you list those again?
Off the
You
top
have.
of my head,
Okay.
so homesteading type of projects, we've got a couple of variations of chicken coops.
Oh, I see the chicken coops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of our smaller coops could actually also easily be used for even like rabbits. You could turn it into a rabbit enclosure. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
that's the marigold. So that's the chicken coop that I have.
Okay.
And we have a smaller version as well.
Okay. That's
And
very
then we
cute.
have things like chicken tractors. I've got, which is for, I raised my meat chickens inside the chicken tractor that we
Okay.
have on the website last year. It fits about 25 birds. And that allowed us to drag the birds onto fresh grass every day, which was
Mhm.
really awesome.
Yeah, I'd like a chicken tractor too. Our chickens were free ranging, and I knew this was going to happen. But in California, see, I didn't have a whole lot of predators, so
Mm,
they could uh, free range. And here, I knew we were right next to. We have a woods. We're like right up against the woods, and I'm like, there's all kinds of predators in there.
mhm.
And I let them free range for a while until one got taken, and then they've been in lockdown. But we've been talking about having making a chicken tractor or something like that so that I can move them around and they can have that feeling of uh, you know, free range.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So you're not only doing the uh, plans, the DIY, do it yourself. For some reason, I always switch that. I say DIY. Anyway, DIY plans, but you also have a homesteading magazine, which I kind of just found out about this one. But can you talk more about your magazine?
Yeah, so this is something I started last year. It's called the Hillsider magazine. I've got two different collections. So the Hillsider magazine is a quarterly magazine, and then I have another one that is called the Hillside Homesteading Collection. And I can touch on both of them and kind of explain what's going on with them. So this started last year. It's actually been one full year officially.
Hmm.
And we're currently, we just wrapped up a launch and we have another one coming out in less than 2 weeks. So we, for the Hillsider magazine, it is a quarterly magazine. The idea behind it is that it's launched seasonally, spring, summer, fall, winter, and it is written collaboratively.
Mm.
So I really wanted to like try to, well, there's so many things to cover here. So one, the reason why I started this is because I really wanted more resources to learn and to build a community of regular people that are just like us, just like you and
Mhm.
me, just regular people out there doing it. And I've received so many comments along the way with my greenhouses and just kind of what I've been up to, of being like, this is so inspirational. You're an inspiration. I look up to you. You've inspired me. That word is used a lot. And I was like, well, if one person is inspiring, imagine what like a collection, a group of people, the type
Mhm.
of inspiration that could be pulled and drawn from that. So the idea behind this magazine is that every edition is written collaboratively. There's usually
Mhm.
about 16 to, let's say, 22 contributors per magazine, and everybody writes about something different. Everyone's got their own niches. And this is people, I've actually featured people from around the globe. There's been homesteaders, gardeners of all walks of life, which
Mhm.
I personally think is so neat. I, especially as a homesteader, not everything applies, that I'm reading inside the magazine, because it's like, well, I can't grow passion fruit or like,
Mhm. Right.
that's just a random example, but
Mhm.
it's still fascinating to hear about what other people are doing in other areas.
Mhm.
Um, so together we write all of our articles and compile this into the Homesteading magazine. We launch it quarterly and we work together, all the collaborators, to share the current edition. They're only ever available during the launch too, so
Oh,
they're
okay.
it's a exclusive,
Yeah.
limited,
And this
limited
is printed
quantity,
too,
printed
by the way.
copy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These are
yeah.
printed copies because we have to say that now. Like everything's
Yes,
digital usually.
and I did want to move. So I started out with digital, and I wanted to
Mm,
move towards physical copies because I believe that when you're paying money, it's nice to have something. I actually have a
mhm.
magazine right beside me. So
Okay.
here's a magazine right beside me.
Awesome.
I just believe that when you're paying money, it's really nice to actually have something that you can hold at the end of the day.
Right.
Plus,
Hmm.
so much work is poured into these, not only by me, by my contributors, with the help of my digital or my graphic designer as well,
Mm,
that it just didn't feel right just letting them live on the computer. They needed to
right.
be something we could
Yeah.
hold. So so that is the Hillsider magazine. You'll find seasonally there's something different. There's just the topics are so broad, it's difficult
Mm,
to even tell you. There'll be preserving food, gardening, raising animals, lifestyle stuff. There's some homeschooling stuff. It's really
mm,
just about the lifestyle. And
mm,
every contributor talks about what it is that they're passionate about and what they want to inspire others to, look into. And
mhm,
then the other magazine line that I have is called the Hillside Homesteading Collection. Now, this one
mm,
isn't scheduled in the same way. It's more just special edition drops. So in the
mm,
past, we've done a handmade holiday gift guide, which
mm.
everyone loved, and definitely planning on doing that again this year. So stay tuned for that. Keep your eyes out. That one was just so well received. People truly do enjoy gifting handmade, and also, life is expensive, and if there's ways we can save money and still gift meaningfully, that was, yeah, people were huge fans. The
Oh,
second
that's
the second one we did was homemade household products. There's
mm,
a big desire for people looking to just make a change, moving away from chemicals, moving more towards holistic. Just trying to people are, and myself included, are just trying to be more aware of what we're exposing ourselves and our families to. Hence why that homemade household products edition came to life.
mm.
And then just recently, just yesterday actually, we closed the window for our All About Gardening edition.
Okay.
So those were all part of the Hillside Homesteading collection. As I mentioned, it's more of like a niche type of magazine with sporadic drops here and there, not
Mhm.
as scheduled. The Hillsider magazine is quarterly, and we offer subscriptions for that one. So if you do
Okay.
want to subscribe, you can sign up anytime throughout the year and it'll guarantee you your 4 copies. So
Okay. That's awesome. I love that. I do miss having collections of books and magazines. Like I used to get the Hobby Farm magazine
mhm.
and had all of those, and I haven't gotten a magazine in a long time. I should probably get yours just because it is nice to just sit there and look through and learn and have this physical copy. Plus, it's in a preparedness sense, we kind of need those things. We need some physical copies of stuff.
Honestly, this I don't talk about that kind of stuff too much because I don't like
Mhm,
people thinking I'm paranoid, but that's not
mhm,
the case. But I do, to your point about having the books in your hands and like preparedness, I actually
mhm,
have been in the last year working at building my own library of
mhm.
essentials like
Yeah.
weed identification, herbal
Mhm,
medicine, like animal husbandry hacks, like just stuff that it's like
mhm.
if the internet crashed tomorrow and I
Yeah,
needed to go to a book to be like,
exactly.
how do
Yeah,
I
we
get
have no guarantees. I think everyone, doesn't matter where you come from, you know that there's no guarantees that we're going to have these things. So it's always nice to be prepared. It's not, it doesn't have to be all about conspiracy. It could just be about like facts of
exactly?
life.
People just immediately, as soon as you talk about preparedness, are like, yeah, they're pretty quick to jump on you about that.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
good
agree,
to be
though.
prepared. Yeah.
It is good to be prepared for sure.
Mhm,
One other thing I forgot to mention that is often featured inside the quarterly magazines is
mhm,
we also, and this is one of my favorite things, is recipes. People will
mhm,
share recipes inside their articles, and I always
mhm,
think that's cool too because a cookbook is awesome.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong, but I love it when people throw in their like special, like this is one of my favorites. I like trying
Yeah.
people's favorites, so I do.
Yeah.
It's like a little treat, a little bonus.
Yeah, that is a nice treat because it's kind of like giving you a part of your personality when you have this like favorite recipe that you share with someone. It's like, yeah. So that's awesome. So I didn't ask you really about your homesteading journey. Like, how did you where are you in your journey? Like, how much do you have other than garden?
So so a little bit of backstory. I grew up rurally, so I've been
Mhm.
exposed to this type of lifestyle. My grandparents were true homesteaders, my
Mhm.
dad's parents. So growing up, they had the farm about 15, 20 minutes away from us. And as a kid, we did spend time there, and they raised cows and pigs, and they didn't have chickens anymore when I was around, but they did obviously when they were raising their family. They were true homesteaders.
Mhm.
And in my area, there's a lot of real homesteaders
Mhm.
that established this area that are my generation's grandparents. And so lots of them
Mhm.
are still obviously living and around. My husband's grandparents were also true homesteaders, and they're still
Mhm.
around, and I was just with them on the weekend reminiscing, and it's yeah. Anyways, that's a
Yeah,
whole other conversation, but
right.
I had a bit of a background and exposure to this. I grew up riding horses. My mom gardened a little bit, just mostly just I think she liked a few fresh things, but it was never for like good, we need to preserve this food to save money at the grocery store. It was never like that type of intent.
Mhm.
And I never had chickens growing up. We never raised our own meat in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, we had horses and a little garden.
Mhm.
But I like to tell people that so that like I wasn't a city kid doing this totally from scratch and had never been
Mhm.
exposed to this lifestyle. So I did have a bit of a background. Grew up doing 4-H too, which is very like egg focused.
Mhm.
I also have my animal science diploma as well as my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. So I do have a bit of this background, but
Right.
all that being said, I never had the intention to really do what I'm doing now when
Mhm.
I was doing all of those things growing up, including post secondary education. But
Mhm.
where I'm at now is it really started out with us. We built a new home, and then
Mhm.
what happened is that we needed to start landscaping. So then when
Mm.
we started landscaping, we added in the garden, and then we added the greenhouse, and then we've added in about 27 more gardens.
Oh,
So
really?
we're really definitely the food, like the gardening aspect has grown
Mhm.
big. We brought in layers last year, like just
Mhm.
our laying hens, sorry. And
Mhm.
then they came in last January. That was the first time we had ever experienced laying hens. And then we went and dove into raising broilers last summer.
Mhm.
So we did 25 broilers for the first time ever last summer, and it went so well. And
Mhm.
I would, I recommend honestly, if you have the time and space, everyone should do it,
Mhm.
truly. And then this year, now we have, and by we, I mean me, I have committed to 115 meat chickens. So
Oh, wow.
we
At
scaled.
once? All at once or
No,
over the course of the year?
no.
Okay.
So I have all my chicks right now. They are
Mhm.
3 weeks old actually this week and
Mm.
tomorrow. So we're doing, yeah, as I said, over 100 meat chickens this year. We are fencing this year to
Mm.
hopefully get a couple of beef cows. My
Mhm.
oldest daughter is old enough to join 4-H. I don't know if everyone knows what 4-H is. Is 4-H?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
we were involved in 4-H. I was a leader in 4-H for dairy and
perfect.
poultry. Yeah.
Yeah, so people and anyway, so my oldest daughter is going to be old enough to join beef 4-H in the fall. So
Mhm.
we're hoping to hopefully add a couple of beef calves to the
Mhm.
homestead. One would be for her 4-H, and then one we'll just raise for ourselves. So that would mean we would have our own beef. We also have goals, probably not this year. It'll probably be maybe next year of adding some pigs too. We're big
Mhm.
hunters, so we
Okay.
hunt and we fish. So that's another way that we
Right.
obviously, I consider that homesteading in a
Oh,
way. Like
yeah.
we fill the
It's
freezer
a
with
skill.
those. Yeah,
Mhm.
we
Yeah,
fill the
it's a
freezer with
skill.
those
Mhm.
resources. So
Mhm.
it's definitely a part of our full scope. And then that's why the desire to raise some pigs comes in, is because we hunt. We do get a lot of deer meat. And for those that don't know this, deer
Right.
meat is often cut with pork. So it'd be
Mhm.
fantastic to have our own. And a big driver for all of this, for those that are listening, is really just the cost of living. It's just the
Mhm.
groceries have just gone so crazy, astronomically
Yeah.
expensive, that we're
Yeah.
kind of going full send to try to mitigate those costs.
Yeah, definitely. I hear it in the States that the costs, and I feel it that it's happening here, but I didn't even really think about what's happening over there in Canada. Like,
I
you
think it
know,
might be worse here, to be honest.
yeah, really.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, for us as Canadians, the States has always been a cheaper place to travel. Of course,
Mhm.
it's like Canada. There's some areas that are worse than others in terms of
Mhm.
the cost, right? But it's gotten, like last year we went to Montana, and I was floored at how cheap your guys' meat actually is at the grocery store.
Oh,
Chicken
really?
specifically, I was like,
Mhm.
holy man, this is like actually affordable.
Yeah.
Here, on the other hand, a pack of 3 chickens last week was $55 Canadian. So,
Oh my goodness.
mhm.
Like whole chickens?
Yeah,
Like whole, oh.
yeah,
Yeah, it would
50.
seem. And what's the cost of feed like there for you, like to feed your chickens?
Expensive also,
Okay.
but we are working on solutions. So one thing that we actually just did, and this again for those listening that are looking for encouragement on how to get started, like we use the word self-sufficiency a lot in the
Mhm.
homesteading world, but really community sufficiency is really what we're after.
Mhm.
Self-sufficiency really just in my eyes means if I'm self-sufficient, it means that I can be community sufficient, because it
Mm.
means that I have the skills that are required to participate in this community of
Mhm.
sufficiency.
Yeah.
Um, and what was it? Oh, I forgot what I was going to say for a second. But so we order our meat chickens with 2 other families so that we
Mhm.
can get bulk order discounts. So that way, obviously, we're ordering bigger quantities of chicks. And then
Mhm.
one of the families that we order our chicks in with actually found a supplier that raises 160,000 birds, but
Oh,
they have their feed. So we were able
okay.
to buy totes of feed for our broilers off of this broiler facility, which is
Oh,
going to drastically bring down our feed cost. Instead of
nice.
$22 a bag, we're going to be paying $13 a bag is the equivalent. So
Okay. That is
very,
huge.
yes,
That is
huge
huge.
cost savings.
Yeah.
I'm also planning on moving my laying hens. Again, I'm not an expert, and I do talk about this a lot with my Hillside page, is that I
Mhm.
am learning all of this. I've got a little bit of background, yes, but I'm really
Mhm.
just taking everyone with me on this journey.
Mhm. Yeah.
So just please, for those listening, I'm not an expert. But one other thing I am looking at doing, and this is because of chatting with my husband's grandma, she told
Mm.
me they always fed their laying hens chop. So
Mm.
we are not farmers, but I did find a local farmer that is also selling totes of chop. So I'm considering that
What
as
is chop? I don't think I've heard that term
so
before.
chop, again, not an expert, but chop,
Mhm.
like their description essentially is it's a different mixture of like it's a feed ration, right? There's
Okay.
some peas in it. There was like some barley.
Oh,
There's
so that might be like scratch? No?
probably I
Okay,
haven't heard the
yeah.
term scratch, so
Okay, so
in my
it must be a Canadian American thing.
it could be.
I think it's called scratch here, it sounds like, because it's mixed with a lot of different things,
Yeah, and is
different
it kind of
feeds and
like your
stuff.
local producers will make it for to feed their own animals? Like in our case, that's what it is it's
Yeah,
a local producer
possibly.
that makes it for their own animals that's
Okay.
also selling extra totes of feed for
Mm,
other people.
okay. Yeah, I
So
don't know if
that's
there's anything like that here, like, I haven't reached out to any local people or anything, so I don't like local farms that sell stuff, so there may be something like that here.
I've been trying to just make a change and move away from the
Mhm,
feed store
mhm,
because, again, I want to make sure that I have the ability to source feed for my animals
mhm,
without having to rely on a store per se that's shipping it in. I don't have a problem. Like we've got a few local seed cleaning plants and some feed mills too that I would gladly go to directly for sure. Just again, really what it comes down to is trying to cut costs, because even my laying hens, like they cost a fortune. They're not cheap. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure someone listening, got some ideas from what you just shared. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I totally, like, if you listeners know that I talk about community, I actually go as far as community dependency, because we need to depend on each other, and it's good to depend on each other. It's healthy as a community to be dependent on each other. And so I say, make community dependency part of your self-sufficiency plan.
I actually
That's the way
love
I
that
put it.
terminology. I haven't heard that, but you're right. Instead of depending on the depending on the grocery store, depend on the farmer's market. Something as
Yes,
simple as that.
exactly. Exactly. I love it. Well, I have so much enjoyed this conversation, and I can't wait to get that greenhouse going. I'm now trying to decide whether the iris or the petunia, but it's going to be between those two probably. But tell our listeners where they can find you, and where's the best place to find your plans, as well as just where you hang out on social media.
So I am mostly only active on Instagram. I don't know how to use TikTok very well.
Yeah.
So for those of you who want to follow me closely, definitely check me out on Instagram. It's at the Hillside Market, and you can shop my DIY guides or the magazine, or we have some other cool stuff that's coming down the pipeline. So you could join my newsletter too on my website, which is www.thehillsidemarket.com. And I've been on Etsy for a long time, since I started this business, and the DIY guides can still be found on my Etsy shop too, if you're ever kicking around that platform and want to scope me out there. But everything that I offer on Etsy is also available on my own website too.
You know what's funny is I get your plans popping up in my Pinterest feed, because I probably clicked on it, but it's like directly your Etsy link to purchase there. But it's like they know I want it. They just keep showing it to me.
Etsy does a much better job at advertising my greenhouses than I do personally. So that's why I continue to stay on there. And truly, I actually do like Etsy. Etsy is really what gave me my chance in this business and what allowed people to help find me. So I support it. I support other people that sell on it too. And I would encourage other people to really check it out too, because it's just other folks like us that are trying to make a go at it. So
right. That's awesome. We'll have to have that conversation in the Homestead Income Plan group, because I know there's a lot of people who want to.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for being here, and I guess we'll chat soon. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, and I definitely look forward to doing this again.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, take care.